This is the diaphragm, and it separates the lower abdominal cavity from the upper abdominal cavity, and its function is to help breathing because it changes the pressure of the lungs. The thymus gland is up here, and it's responsible for producing and processing T cells. The lungs are right here, and those are responsible for oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. The bronchi are up here, and those are the main passageways that separates into the lungs, and it carries air from the trachea to the lungs and backwards. The trachea is right there, and it's the windpipe, which carries air to the lungs and back. The heart is right here, and that's responsible for pumping blood throughout the body and to and from the lungs. The pericardium is the muscular covering the lungs, and it helps to enclose the heart and blood vessels, and it protects the hearts. The esophagus is up here under the windpipe trachea, and it's responsible for carrying food down to the stomach.
Okay, so here is the heart. So what we have here is the left atrium, and then as you go on the inside, you're going to have the left ventricle. So what these do is basically the left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the pulmonary veins and pumps it into the left ventricle. And then the ventricle right there basically pumps the oxygenated blood to the tissues and all over the body. Then as we go on the other side, we have our right atrium right here, this part right there, and then the inside we're going to have our right ventricle. And basically what those do is the right atrium is the chamber that receives all the deoxygenated blood from the body, and the right ventricle is responsible for pumping deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Next, we have the interventricular septum, which is on the inside of the heart right here. And basically what that is responsible for is muscular wall that separates the left and right ventricles to the heart, which are right there on either side. Then the next we have the ligamentum arteriosum, which is basically a ligament that joins the interior part of the aortic arc with the superior surface, which is right on the inside in the middle. Then next we have the papillary muscle, which is basically all the muscle inside and outside of the heart, which basically is responsible for contracting when the right ventricle contracts. Next we have the chordae tendae, which are, you can't really see inside this heart, however, they are basically white strings that are almost cord-like tendons that connect the papillary muscle to the tricuspid valve. Next we have the tricuspid valve, which is on the right atrioventricular valve, so it's going to be more on the right side, and that is responsible for guarding the atrioventricular orifice between the right atrium and the right ventricle. Next we have the bicuspid valve, or known as the mitral valve, which controls the flow of blood in one direction through the left side, which will basically be over here on this side of the heart.
A lung has a large surface area in order to absorb oxygen, and the increased surface area allows for increased gas diffusion. Did you know that a collapsed lung is when something happens to the diaphragm, and the pressure between this cavity and this cavity ends up being the same? So the diaphragm contraction and expansion does nothing because there's airflow in between the two. Enlargement of the heart occurs when heart muscles stretch out as a result of inefficient blood movement. A weak heart that can't pump blood could have blood pool up in it, which causes the muscles to stretch and the heart to enlarge. Do you know that if the amount of carbon dioxide in the blood increases, the carbonic acid buffers can't handle it, and the blood pH would decrease, becoming more acidic?
Okay, so this is our pig. We have, the start is the skin, which is the structure all around the pig. It functions to protect the pig, to regulate body temperature. Next we have the umbilical cord, which is located right here. It functions to transport nutrients to a fetus. Then we have the stomach, which is located right here. And the stomach is a pouch that mixes acid with intestinal juice. Pretty much just stores nutrients for digestion. Then we have the liver, produces bile, stores fat. Then we have the gallbladder, which is located right here, this little pouch underneath, and it functions to store bile. And then we have the pancreas, which regulates blood glucose levels and hormones. And it is located right in, pancreas is located right here. And then we have the small intestines, and the small intestines are these ones right here. They actually appear a little bigger. Yeah, they're actually they're bundled up like this to increase surface area for the digestion. They're just all bundled up over here. Then we have the large intestines, which are on the other side right here. These ones that are even more bundled up, and they function. They absorb feces, and they're pretty much their whole production is in producing feces and waste from the rest of the animal. And then we have the mesentery, which is the structure around the small intestines, and it functions. It's a fold that supports the small intestine, pancreas, and the spleen. So it just kind of helps the actual structure to actually remain there. Then we have the kidney, and the kidneys are located on both sides here and underneath here. And kidneys remove blood waste and release hormones. And then we have the bladder, which is located right here, and it stores urine for waste. And then we have the testes, which are located here, which produce testosterone. The ovaries, which would be in a female pig, produce estrogen and progesterone. And then the uterus, of course, which isn't in this pig also, but is receives the embryo and fertilizes, but it's obviously not in this pig because it's a male. So.
Okay, so here we have our pig's brain, and the first thing I'm going to start with is the meninges, which is basically behind the brain, at the brain stem and the spinal cord. And basically what it does is it protects and insulates the brain stem and the spinal cord. Next we have the frontal lobe, which is going to be at the front part of the brain, and basically the function of that is going to provide higher thinking, reasoning, intellectual thinking, and basically like that, and it basically forms the anterior portion of each cerebral hemisphere. Next we have the parietal lobe, which is basically the posterior to the frontal lobe, and is separated from it by the central sulcus, and that's basically more part of the back. And basically what that does is help interpret sensory information, like hearing, for example. Next we have the temporal lobe, which is basically on either side of the pig's brain, and basically that lies inferior to the frontal lobe and parietal lobe, and is separated from them by the lateral sulcus. And basically what that is responsible for is understanding and reading and speech. Next we have the occipital lobe, which is going to be in the back part of the brain, and basically that is the posterior portion of each cerebral hemisphere, and is separated from the cerebellum by an extension. And basically that's visual patterns. What is responsible for. And then next we have the cerebellum, which is basically the portion of the brain that coordinates skeletal muscle movement, which is going to be in the back underneath part of the brain. Basically balance, muscle movement, stuff like that. Next we have the medulla oblongata, which is basically the portion of the brainstem between the pons and the spinal cord, which is going to be down below beneath the brain, and that's right where the brainstem is. Next we have the olfactory bulb, which is basically going to be more towards the back again, and that's retaining to the sense of smell, basically. And next we have the cranial nerves, which are back more on our pig, which are going to be more where the brain stem is, back here underneath. And basically what that is responsible for is the nerve that arises from the brain and the brain stem. It's not really going to be isolated, but it is back in there. Next we have the spinal cord, which is basically down on the inside of the pig, down all across there, all the way down the pig. And basically what that is responsible for is extending from the brainstem through the vertebrate canal, and basically giving the pig its structure and the shape so it can stand up straight, so it can kind of be on all fours and hold up its back. And then next we have the cervical spinal nerves, which are basically nerves that are all across the spinal cord, all up and down the pig's back. And basically those are the nerves that control neck movement and back movement. And next we have the thoracic spinal nerves, which are basically going to control this portion of the pig and basically all the organs and movements within the chest area. Next we have the lumbar spinal nerves, which are basically going to be this portion of the pig, and basically that's going to be responsible for nerves within the lower back region that control movement from there. Then next we have the sacral spinal nerves, which are basically going to be from here down, which is going to be controlling the nerves in the spine and the hip area. And then next we have the cauda equina, which is going to be kind of right underneath there in the pig, and basically that's responsible for it's the nerve that extends below the distal end of the spinal cord. And then next we have the vagus nerve, which is going to be back underneath here again, and that basically commands unconscious body procedures, for example keeping your heart rate constant.
Okay, so right here is the hard palate, and this is important for speech and feeding. And then back here is going to be the soft palate, which closes off the nasal passage during the act of swallowing, so you don't kind of choke. And then down here, a little more down here, can't really see it, is the epiglottis, which guards the entrance of the glottis, which is the opening between the vocal cords. And then right here is the tongue, and the tongue is covered with taste buds, which allows the pig to taste and also helps the pig articulate words or sounds. The aorta is gonna be right here, right? And it's gonna supply synthetic circulation to the entire body. The entire body basically gets the blood from there. The pulmonary artery is this little squishy guy right here, and it carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. The pulmonary veins are kind of in the heart. There are these little veins right here, and they play an essential role in the respiration. They receive blood that has been oxygenated in the alveoli. The supravena cava, it's like right here, and is one of the two main veins bringing deoxygenated blood from the body to the heart. And then the inferior is kind of this big looking guy right here, and it is the other large vein that carries blood to the lower half of the body. And the inferior brings blood to the lower part, the super brings blood to the top area. And the external jugular veins are right here, and the other one on the other side is right here. And it carries blood from the outside parts of the head and neck to the heart. And then the internal jugular vein is right here. And there should be another one on the other side over here. And it is the blood vessel that drains portions of blood from the face and the cerebral veins. The common carotid artery down here, and it supplies the head and neck with oxygenated blood. The bronchocephalic artery, I might have butchered that a little bit, is going to be right here. It's on the right side, right here, and it supplies blood to the tissues of the brain and the head. Now the brachycephalic veins are the two large veins that return blood from the upper limbs, neck, and head to the heart, which are going to be like on the sides over here. You can't really see them though. And then the ligamentum azureum arteriorum is a small ligament attached to the superior surface to the left of the pulmonary artery. So it's going to be this little guy, or left, this little guy right here. And the umbilical arteries bring deoxygenated blood from the fetus, and those are going to be over here. The arteries will bring deoxygenated blood from the fetus, and they'll bring it back to the placenta. And then the umbilical vein brings oxygenated blood to the fetus from the placenta. So basically all the blood goes back. Right here is the vein. And basically it's just a cycle. The blood goes to the placenta, gets oxygenated, and goes back to the fetus. Where did you go? Oh. Okay. Awesome. And So the hepatic portal vein, it directs blood from parts of the gastrointestinal tract to the liver. So the liver, about in here. It's kind of underneath the liver, really, or underneath this area. Hmm? Okay. And the renal arteries supply the kidneys with blood, and the kidneys are right here. So the arteries over here supply the kidney with blood, and the veins are gonna take, you're gonna drain the kidney, right? And then the iliac arteries carries oxygenated blood from the abdominal aorta to the legs and feet. So you can't see them because we didn't really open up the feet, but they're down there. And then the same thing as the veins. The veins supply blood to the pelvic region over here. And again, didn't open it, so you can't really see it. And then the greater saphenous vein delivers blood from the ankle, lower leg, and thigh to the femoral vein. And the femoral vein is actually the longest running vein in the body. And it's going to be like this right here. If you can kind of see that, poking it up a little bit. It's here, it's these big veins right here.